Good morning, happy Thursday. And it really is always a happy Thursday for me because I'm not in work on Thursdays. I don't work Thursday, I don't work Saturday, I don't work Sunday. I am extraordinarily lucky. And the missus has gone out, which gives me a bit of time to do some podcasting. So, I feel so much better. I feel so much better. These past 4 days have been horrible. And let's get straight into chapter 18, Checkmate. The reporter had been out and taken my story down a few weeks previously. I'd given the okay for the article to be done, however I was told the title would be decided later. I didn't query it. The lady seemed sound. She was very friendly, a little flirty, and sat smoking with us. How bad could the title be? Well, I don't think anyone was more gobsmacked than me when it came out. In big writing it was written, "She's my lover, not my mother." I immediately called the News of the World and told them I wasn't happy about it. They informed me I had given the go-ahead, so there was nothing they could do about it. Fuck it, I consoled myself. Who reads these things anyway? Centre page of a magazine in the News of the World. Well, as it turns out, pretty much everyone actually. We had chat shows ringing up wanting us on their programme. They wanted to put us in a hotel and they'd pay our travel. I asked what we'd get for our story, and our time to be told that they could give us £50 or £60 here or there. So we were to embarrass ourselves again for next to nothing. No thanks. Wasn't good enough. I'd rather just sit, limit the damage down that had already been done. I'd gone from being a lad in care paying social workers' wages with my silence to paying wages of someone else to make fun of my life whilst I talk about it. No thanks. I have an unorthodox life, and I took a shot. I was trying to help my family. I fucked up. It didn't work out, but I'd be damned if I'd let it continue. Over the next 2 months we had calls daily. I was polite every time apart from once. I'd open the door and I read had asked me, "How do you think your love life affects her children?" I'd played dad for nearly 2 years, and I thought the world of those kids. I was wrong in a lot of ways, but I'd done my best. "Where did you come from?" I asked innocently. "I'm Jane with X News," she said with a big fake smile. I don't know if X News is an actual place. X was put there to just determine that it was a random news place. So if you're X News, don't come and sue me. She said with a big fake smile. I didn't even listen to which place she'd come from. Inside I was fuming. "I suggest you fuck off back there then," I replied, slamming the door on her. It wasn't fun times. I was scared too. What had I brought to Courtney's door? What had I brought to the kids? It didn't take long. I was in the bathroom when I got that dreaded feeling come over me. It was instant. The same feeling as Alan. The same feeling as Pat's death. I was being warned. Don't answer it. I shouted, "Don't answer it," just as I heard the door start banging downstairs. I ran out of the bathroom and grabbed my sheath knife on the way, slipping it up my back and into my trousers. I had two choices. I would end up like Wenzel had when he took a serious beating, or worse, or I could scare the shit out of them. I wasn't a fan of option one, and there's no way I wanted her kids seeing the shit that I saw as a kid. "In the kitchen! Stay there until I come back!" I shouted. I leaned on the window to see outside that it was Timmy and Betty. "What do you want?" I said, opening the door a notch and looking around just in case it was trouble. "It's just us," Timmy said. "There's no way to greet your Aunt Betty," she said, pushing past me. "Upstairs," I told Timmy as I closed the door and locked it in several places. I pointed excuse me. I pointed to Courtney's bedroom and we went in. I walked past him and motioned for him to close the door, and as he did I walked up behind him. "What do you want?" I told him as I leaned on the wall, invading his personal space intentionally. I needed to appear not afraid. "Saw the paper, man. Clive's pissed. I thought we'd come and see you." "Fuck off. Clive will be around the corner with Phil the second you leave. They'll take the door down. Why are you here?" I said, spitting on his trainer and eyeballing him. I'm not sure why I spat on his trainer. I didn't want to hurt him, but I wanted to get my point across that I would if I had to. I also wanted facts, and wanted him to know never to turn up again. It was a shame. I actually really liked Timmy, but after the newspaper stuff and Clive with Wenzel, I couldn't just let it up. "Hey dude, chill," he said, lifting his arm up an inch. I don't know what he planned on doing with that arm, but by the time he'd moved it, I jabbed his chin and grabbed his shirt with my left hand and pushed him backwards against the door. "Chill, dude, fucking chill." I screamed, grabbing him with both hands and pulling him towards me fast. Then I pushed him back hard into the door. "See that rifle?" I said, not waiting for him to answer. "It's loaded." "See this knife?" I said, reaching behind me and pulling the knife out. "Chill?" I asked calmly, holding the blade up. He went to speak, and so I stabbed the door as hard as I could, about an inch from his side. "If anyone comes through that door, I'll kill them. Tell Clive, Phil, Wenzel, and a fucker else who wants to have a go. I'm both armed and ready to die." I was pushing my forehead into his mouth with each word, purely because he was taller than me. "Okay, man, okay," he said softly. "You go downstairs, you get Betty, you fuck off. Clear?" I said. "Sorry, man, sorry, I didn't know you were upset like." He said he was either genuinely concerned or just wanted to get the crazy lad from Care to calm the fuck down. Unfortunately, my brain was going in another direction. "How did you get here?" I asked. "Roger brought us. He's around the corner," he said, visibly shaking. "Which corner?" I asked, holding the knife up. "He's alone, man, I swear, it's just us." I put the knife under his chin and used it to push his head backwards. "If you're lying, I'll do them, and then I'll come for you," I told him. "I'm not, you'll see, trust me." He'd gone remarkably calm. I didn't like it. He was either telling the truth, but that meant he could be dangerous, or if he thought I'd decided to hurt him, he could flip. "Get out. I always liked you, Timmy, but I told you if you visit, you come alone, nobody else." He walked downstairs and Betty followed quickly behind. I never saw them again. It was around a week later. I was repairing a fence when I heard, "What are you up to then?" I'd known that voice anywhere. "Inside, boys," I said to Aaron and Marcus, who'd been playing in the garden, as I turned around to face Wenzel. He was wearing blue jeans, white trainers, and his customary suede jacket with his trademark sunglasses clipped into his normal glasses. "Time for a chat?" he said, nodding to my hand, which conveniently held a claw hammer. "Sure," I said, using it to point to the chair by the back door. He still had his hand in his pocket. "So how you doing? I heard you settled down now," he asked, cocking his head and smiling at me. I needed his hands free. "Want a brew?" I asked, ignoring the question. "Yeah, can't stop long though," he replied. He was worried I'd call Clive. That's how Wenzel's mind worked. "Wait here, I'll bring it out," I said, heading to the kitchen. "Sure, whatever," he said in a carefree tone, while standing up to see directly into the kitchen. I put the hammer down beside the kettle. "Saw what you did with the paper. Interesting read," he said. "Get much off it?" he added, as though he wasn't bothered. 500 quid, I replied, putting his cup in reach of him, but not to him. I picked up my brew and the hammer. His eyes flinched. 500 quid for stabbing me in the back? Nicely done. He took his left hand out of his pocket and he took the brew. Definitely armed, my mind warned me. "We needed food, carpet, etc. How's work?" I asked him, trying not to let on that I knew he wanted to drop me when I was in the kitchen. I could see it in his eyes, but he hadn't tried. I didn't know why, but I took it as a sign he was waiting for a better opportunity. "I quit. Some guy tried grabbing a woman's bag, so I dropped him," he said. "Can't work there now. Looks bad me dropping the little shit, so I quit." He glanced at me where he said dropping the little shit. I knew he was lying. His eyes always said more than he could ever mean. He'd been fired for being in the newspaper, and he'd come to take it out on me. "Not because of the newspaper then?" I asked, eyeing him over my coffee. "Nobody cares about your shit, lad. I did my time. I'm here nice today, but if you ever pull that shit again," he said, shaking his head. He was getting mad. "We've had loads of offers of TV and newspapers. Right now we're not doing anything. Neither of us want it, okay?" He understood, but he was holding it together. "You do what you want, but you keep me the fuck out of it. There's Rachel and her kids to think of. Did you think of that?" I put my cup down and stood up straight. "I never had a problem with Rachel. Don't make this about Rachel. You got involved with her. That's your problem." I walked to the garden, and he followed 2 steps behind me. He didn't like that I wasn't the terrified 10-year-old anymore. I was 15, and I could lamp him if I needed to. I was surprised he was quiet, and waited him to move quickly to hurt me. He didn't. At the front garden I sidestepped, and he walked past and got into the car. "I won't come again. You don't exist. Keep me out of it," he said, pointing to his red Honda Civic window. It was a different vehicle than last time. "Somebody's working," I said, ignoring his comment. "Yeah, with some bad people, but it pays well. Now remember what I said." He drove off calmly enough, but he was also full of shit. If he'd worked with people who genuinely were that bad, he wouldn't have turned up by himself. He'd have brought them with him. "I'm sick of this shit," I told Courtney later that night. If it's not newspapers or family or Wenzel or care or money, then it's fucking social workers. I just want a quiet life, no hassle, no needing to be a big head, no bullshit. The sooner I get in the army the better. I still hadn't applied. Courtney was spending more money before it was received. I couldn't find a job and we were looking after 3 kids. Additionally, the place was spooky as hell and I was not impressed. Let's go see Dean, I said. Dean was Courtney's uncle, the only family that kept in touch with her. A dirty old man who had his own home with 3 bedrooms and worked 5 days a week. I presumed him a dirty old man because Courtney told me a few years ago he'd hit on her. I didn't ask for all the details and didn't relish the idea of accepting his help. However, we were in a corner and shit needed to change. I told Dean about the place and situation and Courtney backed it up. Dean said if it got worse we could stay with him until an exchange became available. He was actually quite decent about it. We'd all been out for the day. I'd unlocked the front door and Aaron shot past me to try on his new trainers. He'd entered the kitchen to put some shopping down first. I was closing the door when I heard his voice. Trace? I went in and he was frozen to the spot. He'd been in the room maybe 15 seconds before me and was staring straight at the back door glass window, and for good reason. Looking back at him was a face in pure white. We both stood rooted to the spot for several seconds. It looked like some kind of chalk had been done on the other side of the door, which meant the person had been in through the back door, but not the kitchen where me and Aaron were. My 5-disc multiplayer CD was untouched, as was everything else. I checked the doors and windows to find them all locked. It was a male's face, and it was smiling at me, taunting. I'm ashamed to say I flipped out. We'd cleaned the windows a couple of days before, and it had not been there then. Nobody had been in Boros. I couldn't figure it out, and now it was laughing at me. I grabbed the broom, kicked the head from it, and then used the end to put the window through. You want us out, you bastard, you win, fuck you, fuck you. I went off as I put hole after hole into the mesh-enforced window. When I finally calmed down, I turned to Courtney. Dean's, I nodded. We were packed and gone inside an hour. I promised I'd come back to feed and walk the dog daily. Dean was relatively sound and gave us free rein. I slept in between 2 chairs while Courtney took the sofa and the kids had their own room. It was the year 2000, because I remember the TV being full of fireworks. I secured a job in Manchester selling stuff out of a bag until I could get in the army. I'd signed up and was awaiting my medical. The pay was commissioned, and so some days was better than others depending on how well I could sell. I worked the pubs, clubs, shops and shopping centres. I met a fair few unsavouries. I remember it was roasting hot and had bought a can of Coke in the garage and started to head to the mechanics across the way. A guy came out of the building and I put on Mr. Smiley. Hi, I'm from Tuscan Marketing. I've got some great stuff if you're interested, I asked. No mate, he said. No squidgy purple things today? Okay mate, I said, heading towards the building he'd just left. Oi, don't go in there, he's not in the mood, he called after me. It's okay mate, I'll cheer him up, I said, all smiles. I should have listened. I pushed open the door maybe 2 inches before it was flung open. Next minute, this guy about a foot taller than me has a spanner around my neck and is half marching, half lifting me and choking me off the site. He was gobbing off the whole time, but I couldn't make out what he was saying through my attempts to breathe. Alright, fuck me, relax, I managed to let out as he spun me around and took 2 swings at me with the spanner. The first hit my bag and pulled me down onto the wall. I moved as the second swing landed with a grating chink on the wall where my head had been previously. Fuck that, time to go. I grabbed the bag and did a runner as I heard his mate shout, I did warn him, as the big guy with the spanner started gobbing off at his mate. Another time I was in a pub. I was making a lot of good sales when I got called over by a group of lads. What you got then? I made a point of always showing one item at a time. They started grabbing at stuff, and so I put it back in the bag. Enough to go round, lads, one at a time, yeah, plenty here. Photo album, just £6, mate. You want 2 for 11? He looked at me, not answering. Medium build, dark skinned, brown eyes. His mate wasn't looking for trouble, but I could see the tension coming off him. What if I just keep it? He said, holding it out, but not letting go. You wouldn't do that, you're a nice guy. Do you want it for 6? I asked him, smiling and not letting go either. Or, he said, snatching it away, I keep it. What have you got to say about that? He said, moving it down to the table as he stood up and pushed his face into mine. He was now eye to eye. I had 2 choices. I had been on my feet all day. Fuck it. I chose the second one. "Well, you can give me that back now, or I can put you across this table in front of all your friends," I said calmly. He took 2 seconds and stepped back slightly. As he went to speak, I cut him short. "Pick one before I do," I added, tilting my head back a little. All of a sudden we were best of friends. "I like you," he said to me. "This guy's funny." He told his friends. "Hey man, I'm only fucking with you," he said, handing me the album. My shit was away before anyone could blink. "Have a nice night, lads," I said, leaving him to it. In another section of the same pub, I saw a skinny white lad chatting away to his mates sat at the table. He kept looking up, so he caught my eye. He wasn't watching me, but he was wondering who was watching him, which I found suspicious. Naturally, I headed over. "Mind if I show you what I've got, guys?" intentionally implying other things and getting a laugh, then trying to cover my mistake. "Go ahead," the pale lad's mate said. They weren't interested, but were very polite. I left thinking I knew him somehow. It wasn't until a few nights later the penny dropped. I tried to sell Rodney Trotter some shit out of a bag. I so wish I'd got his autograph. I remember that. I'm going away from Checkmate again. I shouldn't keep stopping from Checkmate. But 2 things. Firstly, the violence with Timmy. Oh my god, he was a decent lad. He was a decent lad. And I don't know to this day whether they came up for trouble or not with Roger and the... You know, obviously Clive wasn't there, but I thought he was. And I was... I'm not justifying what I did. I was horrible. I was absolutely horrible. But I was 15. I was mixed up. I was confused. I'd been through a world of pain. And I was scared. You know, I am not justifying it, whilst justifying it. I was bang out of line. But, if I thought the options were that I was going to take a kicking in front of the kids, have my back severely done like my father's was, potentially have her and the kids hurt as well, you know what, fuck it, I'd do the same again today. I would do the same again. If I believed 100% they were my options. Likewise, I do not agree that that would ever occur again today. My life is completely different, and I'm completely different. I don't jump the second the door goes these days. I don't jump when I hear a noise in the night. I'm not flipping out of bed ready to defend myself. Life is so much different. Now, on to something a little bit more of an improvement. I remember that. I remember going over and going, "Mind if I show you what I got, guys?" and being all very much like, "Hey, what?" holding my bag lower down so it was by my tackle, you know. I remember that. I remember thinking, I know this guy, he keeps watching me, I ain't got a clue who he was. And it wasn't till I was watching TV actually with Courtney, and I saw him on TV and I went, "That's him, that's the bloke I saw the other night in the pub." I'm not one for collecting autographs, but the guy, William Lansbury, I can't remember his name, but the guy who plays Rodney Trotter is a working legend, you know, a living legend. So yeah, that would have been cool. I don't collect autographs, I don't get shocked, but that would have been cool to be like, especially I should be, "Yo dude, can you sign the bag?" That would have been amazing. Bless him. Back to Checkmate. I was due some care leavers money, and Tuscan Marketing had promised me my own team if I fronted them £2,500 for the start-up and stock. I said I'd think about it. Pairs it stood depending on what I sold, and everything was commission based. However, as a team leader, it depended on what my team sold. It sounded good to me, but I had little perception of a bigger picture, and no idea about business. There was a blonde girl put with me to train me up for about 2 weeks. She laughed at every word I said, to the point I actually started saying things that were not funny just to see if she'd laugh, and she did. As much as I realised she was as fake as hell, I was actually loving the attention. She seemed genuinely interested in anything I had to say. She was quite pretty, and she was only a year older than me. When I told the boss I wasn't sure about putting the money forwards because it seemed his right-hand man couldn't count properly, the commission she suddenly found... forwards because it seemed his right-hand man couldn't properly add up the money from the commission-based sales, she suddenly found another guy just as funny, as interesting as she had me. I wasn't going to let it show that it stung. After all, I was technically with Courtney, although I had told her as soon as I joined the army I was off. I'd been shortchanged by the accounts guy several times already, and always had it resolved with the boss until one day. He was only out by £3, but still. The 4th day it happened, I took my bag to the boss and asked him to count it up, which he did. I told him not to pay me, just to do the maths, and I took the exact same money and items to his assistant, who paid me short. I took my pay and paper confirming the amount to the boss and told him, "I do his job, or I'm out. He tried talking me down. I ignored him, left his bag in the middle of the room, and I walked out. Chapter 19. Staff Sergeant Mike Pay was his name. I remember walking to the Armed Forces Careers Information Office in Manchester for the first time. They had a little quiz for people interested in signing up. I remembered what Carl had said about not telling them about him. I wondered why not. After 20 questions and the quiz, I was asked if I had anything against various cultures and how I'd feel if I was sent in an active zone. I have no family, it's part of the job, I replied, as I dreamed about row after row of women watching me master an assault course with an M16 slung over my back. Mike ran through my answers on the quiz. I knew every weapons question, but had failed the maths one. "We'll work on that," he told me, handing me his card. I wanted the uniform. It was where I belonged. Putting my life on the line for others, and knowing that they would do the same for me. I wanted the camaraderie. I wanted the morale. I wanted the family. I loved the idea, and I hit training hard. "Oh, and get a haircut," Mike told me, tugging my long brown hair gently and laughing. I visited every week just to see how my application was coming along. Mike took me to lunch one day. I was dead impressed he had a CD player in his car. "Why do you really want in?" he asked me. I'd wanted in since I stood in front of my uncle's beret. He served 22 years in the Cheshire Regiment, and he boxed for his country. My father killed my mother when I lost my mother. I knew it was the life for me. I promised my friend I'd return one day in full military uniform, and I will. He seemed to understand. I liked Mike. My basic training forms had just come through. I was to go to Lichfield for my medical, then I was to take the physical directly afterwards. I wasn't worried about the physical. I knew I'd fly through that. "Don't mention your shoulder," Cole's words echoed through me. I was 2 days away from sitting the medical. I'd just got home from a run. "Babe," said Courtney, as soon as I closed the door. "What?" I was not really looking at her, chucking water on my face from the kitchen tap. "I'm pregnant," she said. "What?" I asked. "I'm pregnant," she repeated. I was in total shock. My world shook. This couldn't be. This wasn't planned. I wanted to be a dad, but not now. Not with her. "I'm joining the army," I said, feeling like a bastard. "I know, I'm sorry," she said. "Are you sure?" I asked. We had a big long chat over 2 days about how sure she was that she was pregnant, and the best course of action to take from here. I couldn't abort. She could, but I couldn't. I didn't want kids with her, but now I felt I had one. I couldn't not have one. I couldn't kill a child. If she was pregnant, it was probably mine, and so I'd take responsibility for it. I'd do whatever was needed, but I had to see if I could get in the army too. Was I good enough? I sat upstairs wide awake the whole night before Lichfield, looking at my piles of military books, leaflets and paperwork. I sat there staring at them for over an hour. Then I picked up the lot, carried them downstairs, opened the front door, opened the big black bin, and I dropped the lot inside. Courtney was downstairs on the sofa. "I'm going to see if I can get in. Whatever happens, we'll have that child. We don't get on now like we did, but we'll work on that for the kid, okay?" She agreed. Her eyes were full of tears of relief. It was as though she'd got what she wanted. Whether this was natural behaviour, me reading too much into things, or because of a feeling of low self-worth, or just me being really overly analytical and distrusting because of the past and wanting to join the army, at this point, I didn't know. I went to Lichfield, where I sat patiently for hours before taking a sight and hearing test, then filled in some more forms, and then the medical. Pass, 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 and I felt great. Yet feelings of being a dad kept cropping up. Couldn't seem to shake them. I could be here, surrounded by military personnel, friends, a secure environment, learning a trade, and here I was thinking about how that child would survive without me. I certainly couldn't leave it with Courtney alone. Look how she treats her own children. "Is there anything else we need to know, or you think we should know before your physical?" the guy asked me. I knew the wrong answer, and I gave it to him. "I can dislocate my shoulder at will. It doesn't affect me physically, but watch this," I said, popping my shoulder out, and then in again. "I'm sorry, lad. You can't get in," he said. "Don't mention your shoulder," I heard Carl say in my head. Fuck it. I'd done right. By my kid. But I wasn't giving up. "What are the other options?" I asked. "Well, you can sit another medical. We'll send you to a doctor. But the result will be the same, he answered. Set it up, I said. He agreed he would. I returned home and started applying for jobs. Why do you want to work for McDonald's? The guy in Manchester asked me. I had no work, no interview skills, no qualifications. I had no idea what to say. I've worked warehouses before, mate. It's not much different, is it? I've got kids, they need to be fed, it's as simple as that, I said, leaning forward and opening my arms, because I'd read somewhere body language was important. Opening my arms apparently made me look like I had nothing to hide. He was a thin, weaselly looking man with black hair and eyes. I didn't like him, but I figured I could work for him if it meant the kids would be happy. Besides, people respect honesty, right? Wrong. I was turned down for every job I applied for, including that one. After spending the day handing leaflets out, I walked into an undertaker's. My name's Tracie, call me Trace. I've tried everywhere. I know it's a long shot, but you got any work for me? Looking back, the guy was really decent about it, considering he could have just laughed at me. Got any qualifications, he asked, behind a large oak desk, all suited. No, sir, but I learn fast and well. I saw both my grandparents die. My mum was murdered, so I can handle death, you see. I tried to join the army, so I don't mind dirty jobs. You can always train me up, I said, full of hope and enthusiasm. He informed me I'd have to go to college, and then to university for a long, long time to do his job. At home I was ranting out loud. Turned down by fucking McDonald's? Wenzel was right, I am useless. I did the only thing I could think of that night. The only thing that might be able to give me some advice. I called Wenzel. I was going to be a dad, and I needed dad advice. What was I supposed to do? Hi, listen, I need advice. What you done this time, he said. I didn't argue. Courtney's pregnant. He started laughing. I told you to use your head with a bird, but if you'd use your head you wouldn't be in this mess, would you? He started cackling at his own joke. He didn't mean protection. It was an oral sex joke. Oh, that's brilliant. Best laugh yet, he said. I hung up. Yeah, I was a joke. But I was a joke who'd died before he'd not take care of his kid. I went to see Mike again. Maybe I was looking for guidance. Maybe I wanted out. I wasn't sure. What are the ways in, I asked him. Well, you can do 6 months in the TA and then get a transfer, he told me. TA? Toy soldiers, I asked him. Apparently they weren't like that anymore, and if it'd get me into the real army, what's 6 months in the grand scheme of things? I signed up. The guy who signed me up was more interested in showing me his screensaver where the girl's bikini fell off. He was a big fat fella who thought he had a sense of humour. Look mate, I've got my missus's kid with me. I'd rather not do the tits out bit at the minute. Could you tell me what else you do here? I nodded to his PC. Here, look at this, he said, load your game up. I walked out with her lad. 6 months of that shit I could not handle. My old scout leader would be ashamed. I was an hour from heading away for my second medical when Courtney stopped me. I need to talk to you. It's about the baby, she said. Okay, what's up? I asked her. No, nothing. You've got a big day ahead. You go, it'll be fine, she said. Look, if there's a problem, I'm here. What's the matter? I asked. Are you sure on the name? She asked. That it? I replied. Yes, she said. I told her we'd talk tonight and I left. When I finally reached Litfield, both hungry and thirsty, it was a private doctor's. The receptionist asked if I'd had a good journey. I'd never been to a private doctor's before or since, and I was curious. Yeah, I replied. Would you like anything to drink? She asked me. I was gobsmacked. I grew up on a council estate. I wasn't used to the etiquette. A doctor offering me a drink. They must think I'm fucking royalty. I declined, but I made a mental note that these military guys were made of money. The doc saw me and asked me to lift my arms up. I did that just fine. He said we were done. That was my entire physical. You have a subluxive shoulder displacement, he informed me. What? I asked. You have a recurrent dislocated shoulder, he said. Yeah, I know that, I replied. But it only does it when I want it to, I said. Sorry son, you can't get in. Let's say you're on active service with 4 mates in the field and the enemy's all around. Your shoulder pops and gives away your position. What happens next, he asked. I hate to admit it, but he had a point. Fuck. Look, if you want to contest it, you need a civilian doctor to say your shoulder's fine. Then we could look at it again. But the truth is, the answer's going to be the same, he said sincerely. I thanked him and left. A civilian doctor to say I'm fine. No problem. I once told the lady doctor all about my mum and she'd fallen apart in front of me. I was pretty sure I could swing it, she'd say anything I wanted to. She had a soft spot for me. And hell, I was Wenzel's son. If need be, I'd turn the charm on. I got home late. The doctors were closed, and Courtney was asleep. I left early, after getting the kids to school. "There's a bit of a wait, I'm afraid," the cute receptionist told me. I smiled and clutched my head. "Tell her I've got terrible head pains, I feel like I'm dying," I said, winking at her. She eyed me with a smile. One moment. When she returned, I was just ushered straight in. I gave her a wink. "Thanks," I said. "I believe you're dying, Mr. Daly," she asked, looking up over her glasses. "Yep, I'm dying to see you, Doc," I replied. I got telling off, which I totally expected, and then somehow managed to talk her around. She would be happy to sign that I was fit for civilian work, but she couldn't sign to say I was fit for military service, which was fine for me. The military doc didn't say which service, he just said to get someone to say I was fit for service. "Fair play, thanks, Doc. Just out of curiosity, what is the truth exactly?" I asked her. She sighed like she was going to give me some bad news. "The truth is, over time your shoulder has got worn cartilage and it will get worse. We'll be able to operate with a metal pin, but you'll only be able to move it up and down, or side to side, not both." "Can I be honest, Doc?" I asked. "Sure," she motioned, palms up and shrugging. "We'll fuck that off then, yeah? Whilst I can still use it fine, then I will. When I can't, then you can pin it. Deal?" She laughed, and I realised she was super cute when she laughed. When I got home to update Courtney, Dean was at work and she was watching TV, all smiles until she saw me. "I lost it," she said straight away. What happened?" I asked, not sure whether to hold her or not. She started crying. "I was on the loo and it just sort of fell out," she said. I questioned everything. I had no reason to doubt her. She had 4 children, but something didn't feel right. Was it formed? She was only about a month in. I knew nothing about pregnancy. "Yeah, it was tiny, little blood," she replied. Something wasn't adding up. I was putting it down to my brain not working correctly. Shock? "Why didn't you call me?" I asked myself. We'd chosen names. I was ready, or at least part ready. "You shouldn't have to deal with this on your own," I added. "I didn't. Dean was with me." "Don't tell him, though." "I told him and he's really embarrassed," she said. I didn't know what to say, so I just held her until she slept. Dean was on night shift, and Courtney was out like a light. Perhaps I'd not tried to join the army. Maybe if we'd have had our own place. Maybe if I'd have stayed at home. Maybe the stress done it. I believed that. I believed wholeheartedly the stress I caused had meant the baby passed all because of my selfishness. I sat in silence for a few days whilst Dean and Courtney watched TV and chatted. I did nothing but sit in that chair and watch Dean go to work, and I tried to comfort Courtney. She didn't want to talk about it in front of Dean, because apparently he'd once lost a child. Courtney didn't appear to need comforting though. She'd somehow dealt with it. She kept telling me what's done was done, and I shouldn't keep going on about it. I presumed she was in shock. Didn't realise she wasn't ready to deal with it yet. I offered to make food for all of us, but Dean was getting ready for work. Dean was washing his hands when I approached him. She asked me not to say anything, and I'm sorry it's taken me a while, but I just wanted to say thanks, man. I should have been here. I held my hand out to shake his hand, and his reply lingers to this day. "What are you on about?" he said, genuinely bemused, his curly grey hair covering one eye. "It's okay, she told me about the..." I started crying. "Baby," I added. He shook his head. "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're on about. You need to talk to Courtney." I nodded. "Okay, I understand if it's hard for you," I said, walking away with my head down. "No, lad, I don't know what you mean," he said, nodding to me and closing the door behind him. I told Courtney I was going for a walk, and walked out about 5 minutes later. I didn't tell her I spoke to Dean, who could give me answers. Why would she lie? She wouldn't, surely. She had 4 kids. How well do you know anyone, I asked myself. Fuck it, I needed to see a doctor. It was the only answer. I had to argue with the receptionist until he finally agreed to see me. "Okay, Doc, I don't know how to say this, but, how can I help her now she's lost a child?" He looked at me blankly, told me he couldn't discuss Courtney. I told him my story, and explained I needed to know for sure. He told me again he couldn't discuss Courtney, but could help me with information about pregnancy. He told me about morning sickness, about mood swings, about pregnancy tests, about checkups. He was a good doctor, and to get him to even explain I'd had to be quite persuasive. I'd hated myself for it because he was a good man. But I had come away with the truth, a clear conclusion. And although I didn't know the why, I did know the conclusion. I walked in, looked through her, and said with no feeling, "We're done. We're civil for the sake of the kids. But the first chance I get, I'm off. No questions." She asked, begged, pleaded, threw a strop. I wouldn't budge. I either said no questions or not interested. I hated her, but I hated myself for hating a woman too. I felt it made me just like Wenzel, and I still felt like I'd lost a child, like the baby had been real. I had a name. I had shock. I had emptiness and pain. When the doctor and Dean said what the doctor and Dean said didn't take that away. My knowledge didn't change the pain. Another hit to a growing list. I was finally heartbroken. Chapter 20. A girl with dark red hair knocked on our front door, breaking me out of the repetitive silence. It was 1999 because I remember the lead up to the Millennium Celebrations was on TV. She was still about 17. I was letting her run through what was obviously a sales pitch before I closed the door on her. Except I heard the word karate and my ears pricked up. I had an idea. I asked her to come in and I spoke to Courtney. Inside half an hour I was working for a club which went door to door getting people to sign up to their form of karate. In return I got a poor pay by commission package. However, included in that was free karate training. Anything I made I gave to Courtney out of either habit or guilt. I still blamed myself for the baby. Getting anything myself was simply out of the question. Not because of Courtney, but because I wouldn't have deemed myself important enough for anything apart from my smokes. Some days I made 80, other days I just came home with a £5 note. But I got free training weekly, free use of a sauna, swimming pool, and then a sales hour where we concentrated on different sales techniques. Sensei Wayne ran our group, and I was soon asking for more and more information every time there was a lesson. Apparently there were our style clubs all over the country. However, when I asked for written material, background history, or something showing me the katas, I got very little feedback. We had a grading system, however it was exactly the same as the local karate clubs of a different style. I really enjoyed both the work and the training. "You work here now, you're one of us," Wayne would tell me often. Soon Courtney and I got a new place in Whitefield, and I simply stopped going. I thanked Dean, told him he was welcome any time. Home still wasn't home. I always had the mentality that home was in my mind. I'd seen more than most at an early age and thought I knew it all. It could only stay the same level of shit it always had, right? So why worry? Home's just a building. I was a confident survivor, but an unconfident person. It took about a week before Alan was truant in school due to bullies, and Courtney was keeping Marcus from school because she was lonely again because I was refusing to talk to her still. We had plenty of arguments about his education. "Don't tell me how to bring my kids up," she'd yell when Marcus stood behind her. "I'm telling you how not to, you stupid cow," I'd retaliate. It was all pointless. My social worker knew nothing other than that I'd failed the army and I wanted away from Courtney. To be fair, he offered me another foster placement. I told him to shove it. I wasn't going back into care. I wanted my own place. He came back a week later and offered me a halfway house. A place where I'd have my own room, be with other children from care who have some kind of requirement and who have someone to sit them, help them do cooking and cleaning and paying the bills. But I was adamant. "Do I look like I need help cleaning, paying the bills? I look after her and her children as well as myself. I want my own place. If I start hanging around with kids with issues, I'll end up joining them or hurting them. I ain't interested. Get me a flat of my own." He'd explain it wasn't possible, and he was right. He was a decent guy, and I knew he was doing the right thing. I even knew the halfway house was a good call. It was just that I was sick of running, sick of moving, and Courtney had become regular. Stupid, argumentative, pointless, bad for me, and downright wrong. But at least she was stationary. She wasn't going anywhere, and that I hated as much as I liked. I'd got what I could only describe as comfortable with the routine. Even if that routine was hating being there, at least I could come and go as I pleased and nobody was trying to kick my arse daily. Besides, Wenzel was at halfway house when he came out of prison. I associated that with him. I'd not killed anyone. I wasn't a criminal. I didn't have plans as such. I just knew once my care leavers money came, I'd buy a PC with that. I could advertise for people maybe and make money. How hard could it be? In the meantime, I signed up for 2 catalogues, which allowed me to make money on a commission basis. Both of them flunked as soon as they'd started. I signed up for a private investigators course paid for by social services, and I dropped out at the first hurdle. Who did I have to impress? Nobody gave a damn. Why should I? Nobody cared about me, and neither did I. This wasn't teenage bravado, it was just fact. But I wasn't upset. It wasn't my attitude, it was just life, and I was used to it. I was also getting to the point that there was no point in trying at all. Whatever was going to happen was going to fail. Okay, and this next chapter is going to get a little weird, so I'm just going to hit out straight off with, if it's not been obvious throughout the story, I eventually have what I believe is 3 breakdowns, and this one, you ask me today, I'll tell you it was a breakdown. You asked me at the time, I'll tell you everything was real, 110%. You ask me now, the memories of what occurred are real, everything real, it happened exactly as it was really in the story. But I could only tell you today that maybe I was hallucinating. I don't know. You make your own mind up. But I'm giving you fair warning now. The story gets a little kooky from here on in, and doesn't get much better till about chapter 30. So, make your own mind up. Chapter 21. The care leaver's money had come through. I treated myself to a first edition X-Files magazine. It was my prized possession. I'd been watching it for years and had a big thing for Gillian Anderson. I was officially off the care system and an adult. No ties, no review meetings. I could do as I pleased. I got myself a thick brown heavy leather jacket from a second-hand shop. It was ugly as hell, but it was really comfortable. The rest I spent on poor choices, considering we had no carpets or curtains, but I spent it on the kids. They got a PlayStation, a pool table, Space Crusade board game, and the house got a new dining room table. I gave Courtney money for rent and nothing else. I'd been sleeping on the sofa since we moved in. I liked my own space. I didn't like being touched much unless it was simply sex. I wasn't good generally in an intimate sense. When Courtney ran her fingers through my hair before, it felt like she was mothering me, and I hated it. I couldn't relax, but wasn't aware I'd actually never really relaxed around anyone, apart from with Anne, or being alone at Pettypool. I was completely, definitely my happiest when I was in the woods, in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't sleep, so I fired up the PC. It wasn't long before I encountered AOL chat rooms. I could be anyone from anywhere and talk about anything. I'd been talking to several different people, all of them female, and concocting different stories for each. I was enjoying the thrill of not being me, seeing how people reacted differently to each situation. It was brilliant. I didn't have to be me. I was talking to a lass on there for about 2 weeks. She thought I was 21 when I was actually nearly 18. She also thought I owned the house I was living in and that I taught karate to kids in care for a living. She promised to call and help me set up the speakers on the PC. I told her Courtney and her kids were staying with me for the time being as there is nowhere to go due to an abusive ex-husband. The house was actually council and in Courtney's name, and so I gave her my number. I told Courtney she was calling later to make herself scarce, or at least leave me alone while I sorted the speakers out. She was not impressed and ranted for the rest of the day. I told her again and again when we were done. "What do you want from me?" I asked her repeatedly, to which the answer was the same. "You used to love me, I want us back." I told her there was no us, and there never would be. To be fair, it can't be easy for her, but hey, she lied to me, and despite my lies, I hated any kind of lie being told to me, and believed wholeheartedly that I'd fight fire with fire. If she hurt me, I'd hurt her more. Although I was never physical with her, I was cruel during her arguments. I could see myself turning into Wenzel when she started. "You can't mother your own children. What makes you think you can mother mine?" I wanted her to slip up. I wanted her to admit she'd lied about the baby. I wanted her to grieve like I was grieving, but she never did. I told her Dean had no idea that I'd seen her doctor. She told me Dean had lost a child and wouldn't discuss anything with anyone due to his bad memories. I told her she was talking shit and I knew it. The woman online was called Megan, and I arranged for her to call another night. I was drained by the time Courtney and I had done talking, and I still didn't believe her. A couple of weird silences passed, with me just speaking to Megan via text or the internet and ignoring Courtney. I knew the day would come when I'd be moving out, and so I started decreasing the amount of time I spent with the children. I stopped playing Hogs of War with the kids on the PlayStation. I stopped playing Space Crusade. And I stopped helping Aaron with his homework. Marcus never had any on account of Courtney not sending him to school. And to be fair, if it was anything mathematical, I was horrendous at it anyway. They were good kids. I was sat on the sofa staring through the TV and thinking about how to make a clean break when I realised I'd only ever met Dean from Courtney's family and only ever spoken to her once about my family and her exes, which all turned out to be violent affairs. And so, I knew very little about her. She had no photographs and never spoke about her parents. I was sat on the edge of the sofa, turned to the TV, with my back to Courtney. I didn't want to give her any reason to speak to me, but she was still rattling on and had been for hours. There was only us in the house and I was completely blanking her, despite her being on the same sofa but at the other end. It was then I started to feel a vibration, what I can only describe as an internal humming. What I didn't know then is this could well have been the start of an entirely different kind of breakdown. I wasn't paying any attention to the TV despite looking straight through it, and I wasn't paying any attention to Courtney. I looked at Courtney and back at the TV. She gave me a strange look, as it was the only time I'd vaguely acknowledged her. It got more faint when I wasn't concentrating on something, but when I concentrated on it, it vanished altogether. I stared back to the TV and tuned both Courtney and the TV out again, and it returned. The more I tuned them out, the more it increased. I looked back at Courtney and saw a mist on the chair. "You're seeing things," I told myself, turning back to the TV. Then I immediately felt, "No, you're not." And then it's okay. I looked back knowing the feeling was coming from the chair to see a man with blue jeans, a white open shirt and trainers sat on the chair in the living room. "What's up with you?" Courtney asked me. "Shut up for a minute and listen," I replied calmly. There was no malice, no danger, nothing negative in this entire situation. It felt perfectly calm and perfectly normal, as though what I was experiencing should be what we all experience, all times. However, I knew with my rational self that I was experiencing definitely wasn't usual. The male smiled. He was wearing no jewellery apart from a watch. His hair was fair and coiffed but short. Both hands rested on the arm of the chairs. It was as though he knew I'd be looking for signs of danger from him. He showed none whatsoever. I spoke to Courtney, but didn't take my eyes off the man in the chair. His eyes were light and calm, almost welcoming, as though he wanted me to know more. What I'm going to say now sounds crazy. If you think I'm nuts, I want you to call an ambulance, the funny farm or whoever, straight away, okay? I was worried my past had started to catch up with me, and that perhaps being in care and losing my family had sent me over the edge. Again, I wasn't panicking. I was merely very intrigued, but at this point I was willing to take Courtney's opinion as better judgment than my own, which should confirm I definitely wasn't in the correct state of mind. "What you talking about? You're acting weird," she said. "Promise me," I said, firmly pointing at her briefly, but looking at the man still. "Okay," she said, standing to get her drink from the table and sitting back on the cream sofa just a hair's width further away from me than she was previously. I explained what I could see, and asked her if she could see anything. She couldn't. She wanted to know more. "Am I crazy?" I asked her, genuinely concerned. "It's possible with my past, you know. I don't feel crazy. He seems calm and happy enough," I asked. "What else?" Courtney asked. "I don't know. I'm saying what I see. He's not here for me. He never lived here," I added. "What else?" she said. I don't know anything. There's a guy sat in the chair, that's all I know." "Okay, how do you know he's not lived here before?" she asked. "I don't know. I just do," I said with certainty. The man gestured at Courtney with his hand, but kept smiling at me. I shook my head. What I felt he was indicating was too hard, and even if it was right, why would I want it? Would I want someone telling me some spirit had appeared and wanting to talk to them, but couldn't, so was talking through me? Nonsense. I'd laugh them into next year. There's no one on this planet I was accepting that. "Nothing," I said to Courtney. "I'll describe him again," I added. "What's his name?" she asked me, which was a fair question. If he's here, he must know his name, right? "I don't know. I can't hear him, and I don't want to. That'd be too real," I said. "Okay, ask him," she said. "What's your name?" I asked in my head. I knew he could hear my thoughts, but I also knew he could only pick up thoughts I wanted him to hear. Again, I have no idea how I knew this, but it felt to be true. I immediately confused myself by wondering what if what I knew was exactly what he wanted me to know, and he was knowing all of my thoughts and creating himself through my mind, and he wasn't real at all. I justified asking his name by the fact that I could see him sat in the chair, and that if I'd created him, or if he was using me, then neither of us would have gone to the trouble of creating an image of a person. I saw an empty lemonade bottle in my head, as though I'd visualised it, but I hadn't. He'd put it there, as though on a screen, but without the actual screen, just there in my head. I started telling Courtney what he was showing me. I see bottles, lots of bottles. I'm joking with the guy whilst the wagon is packed full of bottles. The entire scene had changed. I was now this man and seeing what he had seen. I was both in the house and on the sofa somewhere else entirely seeing what this man was showing me, as though it was his life. It's 8:52, it's on my dashboard. I'm taking a corner, there's a car coming, I explained as the scene played out in front of me like a movie I could feel. I wanted to say I'm fine. I never got a chance to say bye, I said, turning from the man to Courtney. I was humming with the same vibration I'd had initially. I could feel it like a motor was implanted in every area of my body. Courtney was in tears, and I immediately thought I'd said something awful and mean, and that I was totally insane, and should be in the loony bin before I came a danger to myself or others. I'm crazy, aren't I? I'll call them. I'll tell the social workers first, I said, pulling out my Nokia with the twist-off antenna. No, Courtney said, sniffing. He's my brother. He's Graham, she said, sobbing. So he's real? I asked her. I mean, I see him and whatever he sends me, but he's actually alive? Was alive? I asked her, tripping over all my words and trying to ignore Graham was still sat there, but had crossed his legs. I nodded to Graham apologetically like I was sorry. I mistook that he was dead, and for some reason I should show that some respect, even though he seemed as alive as Courtney and I. Ironic, considering he seemed more worried about whether I was okay or not, than if he was alive or not. I was comfortable, normal even, but knowing I was experiencing something abnormal. Courtney asked me more questions. I kept telling her to just ask them out loud, and he could hear her, and then he could tell me, and so it was a bit awkward. It was even stranger when I tried to explain that he could feel her thoughts too, so technically she didn't have to ask me anything. She should just ask in her head, and he'd tell me, and then I'd tell her. I answered questions for hours, and then he left. Most seemed to comfort or upset her, which appeared to be kind of the same thing. Graham let me know he'd be back through a feeling he sent me. Courtney and I spent the rest of the night talking about Graham, and her routinely asking if he was here, and me saying no, or I can't see him, or I don't think so. I felt a right idiot saying no to an empty room. Hey, Graham, are you here? Nothing. Over the next few weeks, things were happening daily, things I couldn't explain and bordered on pointless, but they happened nonetheless. My mobile rang as I lay on the sofa facing the ceiling, with the phone on the floor. Patrick's face had jumped in front of my line of sight. Your phone, Courtney said from the PC behind me. No point, it's Patrick, it's contact, I said, seeing Jonathan and Jodie in my head. I'm not invited, I said. I sat up to watch TV and take my mind off it. Courtney passed me the phone. Patrick flashed on screen. Answer it, she said, and I did. He told me what I already knew. As you're not in care placement and visited Wenzel and other family members, we don't feel it's suitable you see Jonathan and Jodie, he said. Fuck off, Patrick. Lynn and Sampson don't feel it's suitable. You'd lose your job if you stopped appointed contact, I replied. Yeah, well, okay. They don't think it's good for you or them, he said. Thanks, I replied and hung up. He called me back. I ignored it. Maybe it was the baby stuff. Maybe it was the lack of family, or maybe it was having a breakdown. I didn't know. All I knew was despite missing Jonathan and Jodie like they were organs, I wasn't actually lonely. I liked my own company. I missed Jonathan and Jodie. I wanted Caroline around and family as a whole that I felt I'd never have, but I wasn't lonely. I was pissed off I couldn't see them. Sad there was nothing I could do about it. I chose to move away from Macclesfield so I wouldn't keep going and visiting them. The closer I was, the more I'd just up sticks and go there. I went for a bath. Graham? Graham? I said over and over in my mind. Nothing. I tried the visualising thing. I figured if I could see him then perhaps he'd turn up. Nothing. Then I started getting angry. Well, fuck you then, Graham. Perhaps I'm just nuts, and if I am, then fuck you. Who are you to turn up randomly in my head? Fuck off. Nothing. I couldn't conjure him up at will. Perhaps I just couldn't communicate sometimes and could at others. It wasn't like I just had a magic switch, just like I couldn't just go and see Jonathan or Jodie. I was talking to Courtney about Graham, and why he would turn up one minute and not the next. What could it possibly have to do that's so important? How does time work over there? Why can I see him but not the millions upon millions of other spooks that must be dotted around? Courtney told me she felt sad for me that I could see Graham but not my mum. I told her it'd be too weird if I saw my family, and I'd never believe it even if I did. I felt sad I could see Graham and she couldn't. At least I'd had that one experience where we were chatting away like friends when the doorbell went. "I'll go, it's the debt man," I told her, knowing I was right before I reached the hall. I opened the door and he was suited and booted, which I'll admit was a bit unusual. He always looked smart, but not that smart. "I won't be a minute, mate," I said, grabbing his card and cash out of the tin in the kitchen. As I passed him the card to stamp, his fingers accidentally touched mine. As he did, a bolt of grief went up my arm and into the back of my head. Before I knew it, I was talking. "Fuck me, mate, who died?" I said without thinking. "My mother-in-law," he said, his jaw dropping. Sorry to hear that," I said, making sure not to touch him again as I took the card. I could feel Graham immediately behind me, and wondered if Deadman could sense him. Graham had appeared instantly and without warning. No vibration, no massive light, no sirens, nothing, just 1 minute of standard life as routine as normal, and then zap, bolt of grief up the arm, and Graham was there behind me. I walked into the living room through the doorway, after leaving a bewildered Deadman on the front door, step where I'd simply closed the door on him, as Graham walked through the wall and sat on his chair in the living room. "He's here," I said, realising Graham did everything for a reason, including walking through the wall. He was answering my questions. "Why sit on a chair?" I asked him without explaining. I knew he could read my thoughts. "Would you rather I stand?" he replied, meeting the sarcasm. "I mean, why sit at all? Do you even feel relaxed?" He was starting to answer with something about fields of existence, like sometimes I'm awake and sometimes asleep. It's the same for them, but different. Although the long and short of it is, without a body, they don't get tired, and so no, they don't need rest. He did it out of technicality, because it makes me feel better. I asked him if his usual existence was just floating around then. He went on to explain I wouldn't understand. It's more about varying degrees of vibrating light, and that we can do exist in all of it at varying levels. He didn't answer any of my questions, which actually answered them. I was irritated with him. "Brew?" I said to Courtney as I got up and headed to the kitchen. "Graham's in the hall," I told Courtney as she came into the kitchen and to talk to me whilst I brewed up. It was still light out. Early evening, with the neighbour's koi carp being attacked by the cats again, I banged on the window. "How does it work?" I asked Graham. He showed me no pictures, and I heard nothing, but somehow I could feel the words. "I can feel you instantly with your thoughts. I can choose to come or not, but you can't always see me. We have to think the same to be in touch." I knew he was right, but I was human. "I need an off switch." "How?" I asked him, trying to keep my questions short and monotone. "Same as before. Vibration the same," he said, and I felt it. Before I'd been ignoring Courtney, and this time you appeared instantly with the deck guy. "Why?" I asked him. "Want me to go?" I felt him ask. And I knew then that he already knew the answer, and I knew I didn't want him to leave, but I wanted to know more. It was polite of him to ask me if it was genuine, but it was starting to confuse and annoy me. "No," I said mentally, presuming he was actually meaning I did want the experiences to stop. Meaning did I want the experiences to stop? I looked at Courtney. "I want to test this," I told her. She looked at me quizzically. "I need to know it's real," I added. Graham was in the kitchen. No idea what he was doing, but I explained to Courtney he had come into the kitchen from the hall. "Why?" she asked. "No idea. He stood slightly behind you. Looks like he's spinning 2 small balls around his hand." She gasped, but less shocked than she was initially. By now I wasn't surprised. I just didn't know if Courtney was going along with everything I said, or if Graham was real. "Worry balls. He used to keep them in the truck," she told me. "He's moved again. He sat on the sideboard, kicking his feet against the wood." She laughed. "He always did that," she replied. "Why can't I see him?" she asked, and I knew she was asking him, not me. I was about to say, "I'm sorry, I don't know," when it hit me from Graham. "Because you're too close. It's too hard. Emotions make us question everything, and if you can't be clear, you can't communicate." I told Courtney what I felt, but I felt like an arse. "So I can't talk to my family?" I asked him. I immediately felt warm all over me, as though he'd hugged me, but he hadn't moved. "No, but you might see them if they're around," he said. "Okay, thanks." "I'm fine with that," I replied, and realised I actually was fine with that. How could I possibly live my life if I was forever in the pockets of dead relatives? It hit me again this time like a book slamming closed. If you question me, and so you should, how much would you question Alan or your mum? He didn't need an answer. I followed Courtney into the living room after she'd asked if it was okay to go through, or would he find it rude if we just walked off. I explained it didn't work like that, but we went through anyway. Graham walked back through the wall, and I realised how limited we were as humans. He doesn't need to eat or sit. He walked through the wall. He sits out of choice to fit in, to show the true him to us, As we, or in this case you, knew him when in actual fact, yes, he's Graham, but he's so much more. He's like a very real, very solid memory. It's Graham in whole independent thought, but there's more to him. More we can't see or understand yet. Graham seemed pleased with my explanation, but I wasn't done. I was scratching just the surface of my questions, and with each answer 100 more questions appeared. Each question brought answers I didn't understand, though they were open-ended. Emotions were our biggest flaw as humans, and he did the most for lessons as humans. Emotions could be used to communicate if tuned properly. Love was hugely important to them, as though it gave them something like us would be electricity as then love is to them. I said I also meant for us, we're then just encased in human form. We're all connected, he finally sent me. I accepted it, but I didn't understand it. Question everything, I sent him back. He smiled. He was friendly and I was cautious. I liked having him around. I turned to Courtney. Is there anything you know about Graham that I don't? If there is, concentrate on that and I'll try and get Graham to tell me it, I said. He had a pet. What was it? Courtney said audibly for both of us to hear. Okay, I replied, relaxing and looking through Graham. I saw Graham by his truck. I walked around it in my head but saw no pets. The scene changed and I started to speak to Courtney. I'm walking near a field. I don't see any pets and visit a lady. She's young, brown hair, eyes. They're light but brown. It's you. There's a field outside to the right, a blue car to the field entrance, another man. That's all I get, I said, opening my eyes to see Courtney and Graham again. That happened, yes. I was with Tony at the time, she said, as though recalling a memory. Wait, I cut her off. Graham in the chair bent down, as the atmosphere in the room changed again. He put his hand down and a medium-sized white dog appeared beneath his hand. Its fur was really thick and white. I spoke quickly, taking it all in without thinking about what I was saying. Thick fur, white dog, male, light eyes, thick fur, Sammy. Sam? Sammy. He's playful, silver chain. Not worn now, silver chain. Courtney was crying again. She ran upstairs. I just sat dumbfounded, looking at Graham and this big white dog, which again was strangely human. Courtney returned with a tag. It had Sammy etched into it. We gave him away when he died. He wasn't in the truck. He died soon after, and I took the tag, she told me. I was trying to understand how she got the tag, if she'd given the dog away, and then understood who I'd said the name was Sammy, and had her provide me with a dog tag with Sammy written on it that I had never seen before. Had she hinted at her brother owning the dog before? I didn't think so. When I felt. How are you finding this? In a deep male vibration that wasn't coming from Graham. I'm not going on to chapter 22 yet. I told you that was a let me write down on there. I told you that was going to be a strange one. I ain't even going to explain it. Make your own mind up. Make your own mind up. Everything I said in the books is 110% true. I can verify my father killing my mother, the crimes around Macclesfield, the abuse to the largest extent. I have court transcripts, I have death records, I have coroner's reports, I have medical records of several people, I have newspaper clippings. I can verify the majority of this material. I can't verify that. You'd need Courtney's word, and even if you had Courtney's word, she lies. So you make your own mind up. I make things up, I lie, I'm a shit stirrer, I'm crazy, I'm insane. Make your own mind up. Do I consider myself psychic or spiritualist? No. Do I consider myself a medium? No. Do I consider myself hallucinating, crazy or insane? No. All I can say is these things happened at that time in my life. It was a long, long time ago. Make your own mind up. My name's Tracie Daly. Till next time. Take care of yourselves and each other.